The morning sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows of the mansion, casting a golden glow over the marble floors that once felt like home but now felt like a prison. Emily sat quietly in the corner of the living room, her hands resting protectively over her growing belly. The sound of Adrian's footsteps echoed from down the hallway, sharp, impatient and cold. He entered with his usual commanding presence, but his eyes no longer carried warmth. Behind him stood Vanessa, dressed in silk, her pale face a picture of false fragility. "Emily," Adrian began, his tone emotionless, "Vanessa's condition is worsening. The doctor says she needs blood, and yours is the perfect match." Emily froze. The words sliced through her like glass. "I'm pregnant, Adrian. You can't be serious," she whispered, her voice trembling. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You'll do it for me." Vanessa's lips curled into a faint, smug smile, as if she already knew the answer. Emily's chest tightened with disbelief. Her heart pounded beneath her ribs, not just for herself, but for the fragile life she carried. "I won't," she said, her voice breaking. "Not for her." Adrian's expression turned dark. "Then you'll regret it." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that suffocates, the kind that marks the beginning of the end. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and betrayal. Emily's pulse raced as she lay on the cold, sterile bed, her hands trembling as nurses adjusted the 4 lines. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Adrian's firm grip on her shoulder kept her pinned in place. His expression was detached, almost businesslike, as though this wasn't his wife being forced to sacrifice her strength, but merely an inconvenience he needed to manage. "Adrian, please," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "This isn't safe for the baby, for me." He didn't meet her gaze. "You're overreacting. Just blood. Vanessa needs it. You'll be fine." Her chest tightened with despair. The man who once swore to protect her was now her tormentor. When Vanessa entered, the air grew colder. She sauntered toward Emily's bedside, her lips painted with satisfaction. "Thank you, darling," she purred, her voice dripping with false gratitude. "You're saving a life today, mine." Emily turned her face away, unable to bear the humiliation. As the needle pierced her arm, she felt her strength slipping, her body weakening with each passing second. The room blurred, the voices fading into a distant echo. When the transfusion ended, Emily's head lolled to the side, her vision dimming. Adrian brushed past her, rushing instead to comfort Vanessa, cradling her hand as if she were the one who had suffered. Emily's tears slid silently down her cheeks. In that fragile, fading moment, she made a promise to herself. She would never forgive him. Not now, not ever. The mansion that once felt like home now felt like a prison, quiet, cold, and suffocating. Emily sat by the window, pale and trembling, her hands resting protectively over her growing belly. The aftermath of the forced transfusion lingered in her veins, leaving her dizzy and weak. Every breath felt heavier than the last, yet Adrian seemed blind to her suffering. He came and went without so much as a glance in her direction. His phone constantly buzzed with Vanessa's calls, and his voice softened only when speaking to her. Emily would lie in bed, hearing him whisper words of comfort that were once meant for her. One night, as she reached the top of the staircase, she heard his voice echoing from the study below. "Vanessa's life matters more right now. Emily will get over it," he said coldly. The words struck her like a knife. Her hand gripped the banister as tears streamed down her face. In that moment, something inside her broke, not just her heart, but the illusion that any love remained between them. She walked back to her room, clutching her stomach as if shielding her unborn child from his cruelty. Sitting at her desk, she pulled out a small notebook and began writing a letter addressed to her baby, a promise that they would never grow up in this house of pain. She gathered her documents, her medical records, and the divorce papers she had hidden away weeks ago. Each paper folded neatly represented a step toward freedom. Emily knew the time was coming. She wasn't just leaving a husband, she was escaping a monster. Vanessa basked in her newfound glory as flashes from cameras illuminated her every move. Dressed in glittering gowns and draped in diamonds that once belonged to Emily, she posed effortlessly for photographers, her hand resting proudly on Adrian's arm. The media devoured their romance, painting her as the CEO's new love, and praising their supposed chemistry. Every headline felt like another dagger to Emily's back, though Vanessa never once spared her a thought, at least not publicly. Behind the flawless smile and champagne toasts, however, Vanessa's mind churned with unease. She had watched women like Emily before, the quiet ones, the graceful ones, the ones people underestimated. Emily's silence was not submission. It was the calm before a storm. And deep down Vanessa knew it. When she learned of Emily's pregnancy through a careless slip from one of Adrian's assistants, her composure cracked. Jealousy burned through her veins hotter than any spotlight. "She's still tied to you, Adrian," she hissed one night, pacing the marble floor of his penthouse. "As long as that baby exists, she'll always have power over you, over us." Adrian tried to soothe her, his voice low and practiced, but Vanessa's fury wouldn't ease. "Make her disappear before that baby comes," she demanded, her tone sharp enough to cut. Adrian hesitated for only a moment, not out of conscience, but because appearances mattered. Vanessa watched his face carefully, and when he finally gave a slow nod, she smiled. In her mind, she had already won. Thunder rolled across the dark sky as Emily quietly zipped the small suitcase she had hidden beneath her bed for weeks. Every item inside, her hospital records, ultrasound images, hidden savings, and divorce papers, represented fragments of her shattered life and the hope of starting anew. The storm outside masked the soft creak of floorboards as her loyal housemaid, Rosa, tiptoed into the room, her face pale with worry. "Are you sure, ma'am?" she whispered. Emily nodded firmly, clutching her belly protectively. "If I stay, he'll destroy more than just me," she murmured. The mansion that once symbolized wealth and security now felt like a gilded prison. Lightning flashed through the windows as Emily wrapped a shawl over her shoulders and followed Rosa through the servants' entrance. Every gust of wind felt like a whisper of freedom urging her forward. They moved quickly, their footsteps muffled by the storm, until a waiting cab appeared at the end of the drive. Emily turned to Rosa, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for everything." The maid pressed her hands together, trembling. "Go before it's too late." Hours later, as dawn broke over a sleepy coastal town, Emily stepped out of the cab with shaking legs. Salt air filled her lungs, crisp and clean, the first breath of freedom she'd felt in months. Dr. Grace, a kind-hearted physician who ran a small clinic, greeted her warmly and offered shelter in a cozy seaside cottage. "You're safe here," she said softly. Emily placed a hand over her stomach, feeling the faint flutter of life inside. For the first time, she whispered with a trembling smile, "We're finally free." In the weeks following Emily's disappearance, Adrian's seemingly unshakable empire began to fracture from within. Once a celebrated CEO with a thriving brand and powerful connections, he now faced board meetings filled with tension and accusations. Investors who once admired his charisma now questioned his judgment, especially after Vanessa's erratic behavior began making headlines. Lavish parties, reckless spending, and public outbursts painted her as a liability. Behind closed doors, she drained his accounts faster than he could replenish them, demanding gifts and status to soothe her insecurity. "Where's your wife, Adrian?" one shareholder demanded during a heated meeting. "She was the heart of this company. The clients loved her. Now she's gone, and so is our credibility." Adrian clenched his fists beneath the table, his mind clouded with guilt. He hadn't realized how deeply Emily's quiet grace had held his world together. Without her, everything felt hollow. At night he couldn't sleep. Her last look of pain haunted him, the faint tremble in her voice when she'd said, "You'll regret this." He had brushed it off then, but now her words echoed like a curse. Vanessa, once his escape, now felt like a chain dragging him further into ruin. The company's stock plummeted, sponsors withdrew, and even his most loyal staff began to resign. In his solitude, Adrian stood before the mirror, his reflection pale and tired. The man staring back was no longer a powerful CEO, but a shell consumed by the ghosts of greed and betrayal. The truth surfaced like a storm tearing through calm waters. A determined journalist named Clara had been following the whispers surrounding Adrian's empire for weeks. When an anonymous source, later revealed to be a sympathetic nurse, leaked hospital records, the puzzle came together. The document showed clear evidence. Emily, pregnant and medically unfit for blood donation, had been forced into it under her husband's orders. The physician's written protest, ignored by Adrian, was the final nail in his coffin. The headline dominated every major news outlet. CEO forces pregnant wife to risk her life for mistress's transfusion. Within hours, social media erupted in outrage. People who once idolized Adrian now called for his arrest. Hashtags condemning him trended globally, while protesters gathered outside his corporate headquarters demanding justice for Emily. Vanessa, terrified by the backlash, quickly turned on him. In a televised statement, she claimed she was manipulated and had no idea Emily was forced. But her crocodile tears fooled no one. As reporters dug deeper, her involvement and greed became public knowledge. Sponsors cut ties, and within days, Vanessa vanished, fleeing abroad to avoid the storm. Adrian watched helplessly as his world burned. His empire, built on lies and cruelty, crumbled overnight. Investors withdrew, his board resigned, and longtime allies distanced themselves. Alone in his mansion, surrounded by silence, he finally realized the full weight of what he'd done, and that the woman he had destroyed had been the only true source of light in his life. The grand hall glimmered under soft chandeliers as guests mingled, laughter and music filling the air. Emily stood near the stage, her glow undeniable, confidence replacing the fragility that once defined her. The charity event, organized by Dr. Grace's clinic, celebrated stories of survival and new beginnings. Emily had been invited as a silent benefactor, her generous donations funding care for women who had suffered in silence like she once had. But the calm of the evening shattered when a familiar figure stepped through the doorway. Adrian. He looked nothing like the man she once loved. His tailored suit hung loosely on his frame, his eyes sunken, carrying years of regret and sleepless nights. Whispers rippled through the crowd as people recognized the disgraced CEO. For a brief moment, the room seemed to freeze when his gaze found hers. Slowly, hesitantly, Adrian approached, his voice trembling. "Emily, I've been searching for you. I was wrong. I destroyed everything that mattered. Please just hear me out." Emily looked at him, not with anger but with calm finality. She reached into her purse and placed a white envelope on the table between them. "You already have my answer," she said softly. He glanced down, the divorce papers signed and sealed. His lips parted, but no words came. Emily turned away, her shoulders straight, her heart at peace. For the first time she realized she didn't need revenge. Her freedom was justice enough. As the music swelled in the background, Adrian's breathing grew shallow. The edges of his vision blurred as he stared at the divorce papers, the final proof that he had lost the only person who ever truly cared for him. Around him, the crowd's murmurs faded into a dull roar. He clutched the envelope to his chest, his knees buckling under the weight of his guilt. Images of the past flooded his mind, Emily smiling as she decorated the nursery, her gentle voice asking if he'd come home early, her trembling hand reaching for his as he turned away. Every moment he dismissed her love now returned like a blade to his heart. His body gave in. The papers fluttered from his grasp as he collapsed onto the marble floor. Gasps filled the room, and paramedics rushed forward, calling his name, checking for a pulse. Emily stood near the exit, hearing the commotion behind her but refusing to look back. Her fingers brushed against her rounded stomach as she whispered, steady and sure, "This time I'm saving myself." With every step she took toward the doors, she left behind the ghosts of a love that had almost destroyed her, and walked into her new life unbroken. Months later, soft sunlight streamed through the window of the small coastal clinic as Emily cradled her newborn son. His tiny fingers wrapped around hers, and for the first time in years, her heart felt whole. The cries of the past, of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak, were replaced by the gentle rhythm of new life. She whispered, "You're my reason for everything," as tears of joy traced down her cheeks. Word eventually spread that Adrian had withdrawn from the world, living quietly in a private facility. Some said he was unrecognizable, a man haunted by what he had done, endlessly replaying his mistakes. But Emily no longer carried bitterness. She had learned that forgiveness didn't mean returning. It meant freeing herself from the weight of what once was. With the support of Dr. Grace and others who believed in her, Emily founded the Second Dawn Foundation, a refuge for women who had endured cruelty yet still dreamed of rebuilding their lives. Each woman who walked through its doors saw Emily not as a victim, but as living proof of resilience. Standing by the window one morning, her baby in her arms, Emily smiled at the horizon. The dawn outside mirrored the one within her, bright, peaceful, and full of promise. Years later, the golden glow of sunset reflected off the calm waves as Emily sat on the shore, watching her son chase the tide. His laughter carried through the salty air, pure, free, untouched by the shadows of the past. Each ripple in the water reminded her how far she had come, how something once broken could still move with grace. Dr. Grace walked up beside her, a warm smile touching her lips. "You know," she said gently, "you gave life twice, once to him and once to yourself." Emily's gaze lingered on her son as he built castles from the sand, each tower standing taller than the last. "The past took my blood," she murmured softly, "but it couldn't take my heart." The breeze lifted her hair, and for a moment, it felt like the sea itself was whispering back, carrying her strength into the horizon. She had turned pain into purpose, heartbreak into hope. And as the sun sank beyond the waves, Emily closed her eyes, her heart steady and full. She was no longer the woman who had been forced to give. She was the woman who chose to live.